The internet is becoming a much smaller place. Last week we were talking about the digital identification checks that were being implemented across the board, and we had touched on this situation a little bit earlier than that. I can't remember specifically, but yes, the Visa and Mastercard clampdown because of a bunch of activists, the Collective Shout conglomerate, went on and tried to leverage them to debank and to pressure other companies that were simply disregarding this little activist conglomerate's whims in order to enforce their socially acceptable but non-popular positions. Because you remember Collective Shout, they're all about, oh no, we need to get rid of all of these negative depictions of women and all of the atrocities that are reflected on women in video games by getting rid of these abhorrent games. And because Steam and other providers and other platforms won't listen to our feckless calls, we'll just go ahead and leverage Visa and Mastercard to debank them, because that's what we need to do, enforce our own little pet projects and our own little pet ideologies on the rest of the world because it's so goddamn popular. Listen, man, here's the thing. If you don't like those games, because yeah, those types of games have existed for a very, very, very long time, and guess what? They have a very, very, very small, very inept, very unthreatening fan base that's out there. But you know what? They have every right to play those games. And we know where this slippery slope goes. We have seen it play out in this very short period of time, and how the internet is fundamentally changing in response to several other pet project laws that are in place, like the UK Online Safety Act, that would be absolutely upheld and endorsed by the Collective Shout types of the world. Here's the thing. There's some pushback that's finally happening. Because you did the thing. You riled up the gamers. Just wanted to play our games, man. We just wanted to be able to legally buy our games. We just legally want to be able to play our games. We're not hurting anybody. We're not hurting you. But you had to stick your nose in where it doesn't belong. And now you're going to quickly figure out that this is in 2014. This isn't Gamergate 1. This is 2025. And we're about fucking fed up with all of your fear-mongering. So Visa and Mastercard deny direct involvement in gaming censorship amid mass backlash. Well, that's not necessarily true, because we have the statement, right? We have the statement from Mastercard, and well, they got community noted, which is hilarious. So clarifying recent headlines on gaming content, Mastercard has not evaluated any game or required restrictions of any activity on game creator sites and platforms, contrary to media reports and allegations. Our payment networks follow standards based on the rule of law. Put simply, we allow all lawful purchases on our network. At the same time, we require merchants to have appropriate controls to ensure Mastercard cards cannot be used for unlawful purchases, including illegal adult content. Well, yeah, that's totally fine. And if that was the case, if those were the rules that were being enforced, this would not be a video. This would not be a topic of conversation. We could just simply move on with our day. But as you can see, there's the community note that's right here. Both Steam and itch.io have stated their removal of adult content came from pressure by payment processors, including Mastercard. Furthermore, Mastercard and other payment processors have documented history of refusing service to Japanese retailers over legal adult content. But no, all we do is just enforce the law, including illegal content. We just unlawful content. Well, seems like somebody's bullshitting. Let's take a look. In an escalating controversy shaking the gaming industry, payment giants Visa and Mastercard have issued statements denying direct involvement in a recent wave of adult-themed game removals from platforms like Steam and itch.io. These denials come amid accusations that the companies, under pressure from activist groups such as the Australian organization Collective Shout, are indirectly enforcing censorship through their policies on high-risk merchants. This has sparked widespread outrage among gamers, developers, and free speech advocates, leading to mass call campaigns, petitions, and calls for regulatory intervention. And yeah, it all started here. Won't somebody please think of the children? Please think of the women and children. Controversy traces back to Collective Shout, a feminist advocacy group based in Australia, known for campaigning against the objectification of women and what they describe as content that normalizes exploitation. I don't know why I have a picture of Tifa right there, but whatever. A day to reminisce on Remake is a good day in my book. In recent months, the group targeted digital storefronts hosting adult-oriented video games, particularly those featuring extreme depictions and themes. Yeah, games that I don't like, games that I don't buy, games that I don't play. Guess what? Because I don't like them, therefore I don't engage with them. I don't think about them. Moving on. Collective Shout argued that such games contribute to real-world harm. Yeah, this is like Jack Thompson saying that Grand Theft Auto is eventually going to lead to a bunch of real-world activity. Yeah, never ever manifest. These are just the same old tired and trite arguments rolled out once again. But hey, this time it has a pink bow on it, so we need to listen because a woman is talking. Oh, just again, man, somebody please tell me how Islam isn't the answer. According to reports, Collective Shout's efforts included letter writing campaigns and public pressure, claiming that content violates our own processor's own guidelines on prohibitive activities. The group celebrated the subsequent policy changes on Steam and itch.io as victories in their fight. Yeah, we went over that as well. Steam, yes, owned by Valve, confirmed to developers that the changes were necessary to maintain payment processing capabilities, offering store credits as compensation for affected titles. Itch.io, yes, response was more direct, stating payment providers like PayPal, Payoneer, and Stripe, tied to Visa and Mastercard, imposed elevated standards, forcing the platform to hide or remove certain mature content. We went over Mastercard's statement, but Visa's statement, shared in response to customer inquiries and reported across gaming outlets, reads, as a global company, we follow the laws and regulations everywhere we do business. While we explicitly prohibit illegal activity on our network, we are equally committed to protecting legal commerce. If a transaction is illegal, our policy is to process the transaction. We do not make moral judgments on legal purchases made by consumers. However, Visa does not moderate content sold by merchants, nor do we have the visibility into the specific goods or services sold when we process a transaction. When a legally operating merchant faces an elevated risk of illegal activity, we require enhanced safeguards for banks supporting those merchants. Yeah, none of which any of these storefronts do, by the way. Yes, as Grums points out, this is a lie. Keep calling. In each case, itch.io, they put pressure down on the, they put pressure down the chain to Stripe, which Itch says it held to a stricter standard by Mastercard and Visa. So while Mastercard and Visa may claim that they don't directly pressure game distribution companies, there is obvious double standard that is happening, of course. And so, what can be done moving forward? The gaming community has mobilized in response, overwhelming Visa and Mastercard customer service lines with complaints. Some reports indicate thousands of calls per day, causing temporary disruptions. Lol. Change.org petition demanding transparency and reversal of policies have surpassed 174,000 signatures, with supporters arguing that payment processors should not act as moral arbiters. The International Game Developers Association, IGDA, has joined the chorus, calling for clearer guidelines and protections against undue influences on creative industries. And somebody who I dislike vehemently, but at the same time, you got to call a spade on this. You got cue ball himself, Tim Pool, saying we've reached out to several members of Congress, and it seems like as soon as we mention the Mastercard Visa gaming bans, they drop off the earth. Maybe they just don't care, or maybe they really don't want to be involved. Yeah, exactly, because hey, if you would have said, Collective Shout is moving to ban games depicting positive depictions of Jewish people, then they might care about that stuff. But no, if it's just the gamers, that's fine. We can send out memes every 4 years where they can go ahead and vote Republican, but outside of that, we don't really care. But yes, legislatively, the issue has drawn attention to bills like fair access to banking in the U.S., and then also a little thing called Section 230 of the Communications Act that delineates a platform from a publisher. If we could just go ahead and evoke that type of shit, maybe that would be nice. But hey, it's so funny, right? As, just to evoke Trump here for a second, but a guy who was effectively blanket banned across most of social media in the wake of January 6th. So funny how he wants to go ahead and pick up one issue, but he doesn't ever want to address that one. Maybe he'll get around to it in the next 3 years, but I'm not necessarily holding my breath because obviously there are a lot of supporters of his, and there's a lot of people that he could win over to his cause if he would simply look at this shit, because yeah, this is very obviously censorship, okay? This is payment processors enforcing their standards on other platforms at the whims of advocacy groups. We've seen this time and time again. And I'm glad that these customer service phone lines are getting flooded by people that are aggrieved from the businesses that directly affect their lives. Because as gaming has ostensibly, and I would really like to see the numbers at this point in time, is what, 80-20 digital to physical? You need a Mastercard or a Visa or the equivalent, a debit card that is linked in with that type of technology in order to make a purchase, in order to play a game legally. And so this is another one of those downstream effects of sacrificing liberty on the altar of convenience. And if Visa and Mastercard want to go ahead and play the moral high ground card, I mean, one other story that is going around right now, Little Tay, I have no idea what this is, but she just allegedly, this is another, just another one of these jailbait chicks that a bunch of people are oogling and googling. I remember, like, I'm of a certain age where I remember there were the countdown clocks all over the internet about when the Olsen twins were going to turn 18, but she's another one cut from that cloth. And yeah, the moment that she turned 18, she opened up an OnlyFans account. Okay. And then in the first 3 hours, broke $1 million in profit. Now, we can talk about simps at another time. I'm just simply using this as a perfect example. And Chibi Reviews has the excellent point driven home right here. Lil Tay posts her OnlyFans images at exactly 12:01 a.m. on the day she turns 18. You realize everything that she posted was before she turned 18, right? So yeah, this really shows that Visa and Mastercard legit don't give a fuck about the actual problems and children. Yeah, exactly, because all you need to do is just run the numbers on that one. She opens up her OnlyFans account and just absolutely crammed to the gills with content. A minute after she turns 18. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, when was she taking those pictures? When was she making those videos? Oh boy, we might have a problem here. But are Visa and Mastercard willing to divest their interests in OnlyFans? I don't fucking think so. Especially when a little hoe can rock up like this and make $1 million in 3 days. Visa and Mastercard take a beautiful little cut. But hey, don't worry. Activist groups that are all about, pushing back about the negative stereotypes about women objectifying themselves. Why would they give a fuck about what goes on over on OnlyFans? They're just more concerned about what happens with a bunch of guys trying to have a good time, free of the kvetching of perpetually bored women. But hey, what do I know? Outside of Visa and Mastercard are duplicitous scum. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.